Hey folks, welcome back. Today on the show, we have what can only be called as one of the OGs in the biohacking space. We have none other than Dave Asprey. And Dave and I go way back. I was in that first cohort of, at the time, Bulletproof coaches back in Pasadena. I don't know, like almost 10 years ago now. And so at the time I met Dave. He was part of the team that taught us material. It was really cool. And so 10 years later, here we all are. So it's a great conversation. I think you guys will really enjoy it. So thank you for showing up. Thank you for sharing your comments and questions and your enthusiasm. And if you're looking to connect with me, there's a few ways to do that. You can find me on Instagram at Natalie Nidham. You can also go to natnidham.com, my website, and that's where you can sign up for my general newsletter, my peptide newsletter, or you can find out more information about my community, membership community, and maybe you can join us there. And that's where I do live Q&As and bring in podcast guests to do Q&As on topics that people find fascinating. So you've probably heard of butter coffee, right? Maybe you've even heard of danger coffee. And there was another coffee in between that shall remain nameless right now, but I bet most of you guys have heard of that. But did you know the guy behind it, Dave Asprey, is a 4-time New York Times bestselling author, founder of multiple health trends like MCT oil and collagen protein and butter, putting butter in your coffee, and host of the Human Upgrade podcast. He's also the creator of Upgrade Labs, the world's first biohacking gym, and the Biohacking Conference, which is now, I believe, in its 11th year. In today's episode, we talk about how Dave's turning his mission of living to 180 into a roadmap others can follow, and why energy, not time or money, is the currency that really matters. He opens up about his own stem cell adventures, all over his body. He gives us some details on why he believes that kale might actually be a real villain, and how personalized biohacking is becoming more accessible, even if you're not injecting peptides on the regular. Buckle up, boys and girls. This one's part science, part strategy, and totally Dave. Hey, folks, just a quick reminder that all of the information presented in this podcast is for information purposes only. No medical advice, no diagnosing, no treatments suggested here. Before you try anything that you hear about or learn about here, make sure that you check with your medical provider. Welcome to the show, Dave Asprey. It is a pleasure to have you here.
Natalie, I'm happy to be here for you.
It's funny, you know, I started my biohacking journey listening to your podcast and then becoming one of your coaches. And we were just talking about this. This goes back a long time, 10 years, probably.
It really does. Yeah. I think I started the coaching program and trained something like 1,200 coaches back. I think it started in 2014. So it would be about 10 years.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, and you know, it's funny because at the time, I remember when I registered for the course, which is the way I register for things typically, which is I hear about something, it flips a switch in my brain, I sign up, and then I'm like, oh my God, what did I just do? I'd been a nutritionist for 2 years and I was like, did I just spend $5,000 on learning about the Bulletproof diet? Oh my God.
And it was a little bit more than that.
Oh my God. It was so much more than that. It was hilarious. But I just had this like panic attack. And then once we met the crew and really understood what the program was really about, which is really, it was one of the factors that really just taught me how to be a coach, which was, it was a great program. I don't know if you're still offering it in any capacity, but it was a great program.
I exited the coaching program. It was a lot of work to fill it up each, I guess every 6 months. And I think I was charging very little given the amount of time with actual coaches. Most coaching programs like watch all these videos and have a meeting. And this was, probably 100 hours or something.
Oh, it was psychotic. I'm here to tell you, I fell behind once. I had to lock myself in my office for 2 weeks to catch up.
Yeah. So I think we over delivered. And then the state of California one day decided that I was operating a unlicensed university or some kind of nonsense and wanted $100,000 extortion fee. And I'm like, how about you pound sand, California? So I stand by that to this day. Pound Sand, California.
Pound Sand, California. Okay, well then. Well, and that was the end of that. Well, the lucky ones of us who went through the program, and some of us are still friends. It was a great program. So thank you for doing it for when you did it. And all good things sometimes need to evolve into the next thing.
You're welcome. And I do believe that the biohacking coaching program, when I was just starting the biohacking movement, it really helped a lot of people move into the biohacking space. And what I'm doing today that's the closest to that is the Business of Biohacking Conference, which is businessofbiohacking.com. And I've taught 125 entrepreneurs at the most recent one how to grow biohacking businesses. Oh, nice. Along with the people who taught me how to do it. So for people who are interested, businessofbiohacking.com, when we do the next one in 2025, it'll probably be a couple hundred people who are really learning how to build, if it's a coaching business you want to scale, but it's the biohacking products and technologies, and like, how do you build a $100 million company? I know how to do that. That's rare. So let me teach that because I want more biohackers. Yeah. And get this.
Yeah. So is it kind of, so it's not just bricks and mortar. It could be like a virtual business or anybody who wants to make a living in this space.
Anyone who wants to make a living as a biohacker. And it's targeted for people who want to grow a business. If you make a living, if you're a coach and that's all you want to do is do coaching, it's not for you. If you're a coach who wants to build a platform and help a lot of people that goes beyond one-to-one coaching, then it would be for you. Yeah. So it's the scaling ones. And right now, biohacking is a $18 billion business, according to the most recent report I saw, forecast to be an $89 billion business by 2031. And literally, you were there at the first conference where I certified coaches in it. So good timing.
Yeah, no, it's perfect timing. So let's talk about biohacking as a movement, because there's a bit of a divergence going on with biohacking, longevity, functional medicine. Where do you see them kind of intersecting and defining themselves? Because biohacking is, I still think it's pretty specific, and yet it encompasses all those things in different ways.
When I was younger, I ran a longevity nonprofit group. I'm in my 20s, and I'm the only guy under 60 going to this meeting because I had all the diseases of aging. I just got them early. Right. And I just interviewed the world leading experts in longevity back when anyone who said longevity or anti-aging, they were crazy. Like it was like a tinfoil hat, flat earth kind of thing. So I could never get anyone under 60 to come to this. And I also had spent a lot of time in the gym doing bodybuilding kind of stuff. Now, I wasn't a bodybuilder. I was just trying to lose 100 pounds of fat. But I'm like, oh my God, the bodybuilders know this incredible stuff about metabolism and how to control the body. And then the longevity people know so much about stopping aging. And then my neuroscience friends, because my brain was jacked, like they know all the smart drugs and neurofeedback. And I realized the uniting element was we all just want control. So I rebranded the longevity practices as biohacking. So people I rebranded the longevity practices as biohacking so young people would be interested in longevity. Right. The things that make you young when you're old are the things that make you powerful when you're young. And it worked. It brought all these things together, and we have these beautiful conversations. And now biohacking allowed longevity to reach critical mass so that you can have a venture capital firm investing in a longevity company. Because in 1996, when I started all this stuff, they wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Yeah. Right. And so it made space. And you have the longevity people out there, and all of them, like Andrew Huberman, he talks about biohacking all the time. He's into red glasses and nicotine. I'm like, oh, you read the book. This is awesome. Right. In fact, Huberman was on my show before he started his podcast. Peter Attia was on my show before he had a podcast. All these people, though, Attia's not really a longevity guy. He's you're going to die at the same age. You should just exercise a lot before you die. It's kind of weird. You think that? Have you read his book?
Oh, no, you know what? I have it.
First chapter is we're not going to be able to extend human life. So your best bet is to just exercise a whole lot and take some statins and get vaccinated. And then you'll die at the same age, but be healthier.
Yeah, that's a
synopsis of Outlive.
Okay. All right. Well, that's not particularly inspiring.
No. In fact, I was kind of shocked. I was like, really? Like, why do you charge $250,000 to tell me to work out? Like, I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
So there are real longevity luminaries like Aubrey de Grey. I've been friends since 2004. He'll sit down and eat pizza and beer, and he's like, technology is going to save me. And I think there is, like the gene therapy I've done, there's a role for technology in longevity.
Mm-hmm.
But anytime someone says, I'm just doing longevity, like Brian Johnson, who's a friend,
yeah,
he's doing red light, he's doing all of the biohacks. These are biohacks because they're longevity technologies. They just work when you're 25 as well.
Yeah.
Right. And the whole point of biohacking, let's get longevity built in to the behaviors of young people. Mm-hmm. But I also recognize longevity will never be at the top of the list for a young person unless they're terribly afraid of dying. Mm-hmm. If you're 25, what should be at the top of your list is sex, building a career, building a family, building your community. Mm-hmm. Right. And the family thing is pretty early at 25, but you're starting to think about it. Mm-hmm. And in your 30s, you're normally more family focused. And really, instead of just having found your tribe, now you're deepening, you're developing your platform for doing something big in the world. Right. And so there's these phases we go through. Putting longevity in front of a 19-year-old is just bad marketing. And that's why biohacking became so powerful, because if I had known biohacking was when I was 19, I'd be like, oh my God, like I'm going to feel good all the time. My pants are going to fit right. I'm going to be able to go have a social life. And then I would have taken the next step. Because the other reason I started biohacking, it's a gateway drug to being more conscious. Mm-hmm. If your mitochondria work, you have more energy. It flows into fear, and you have enough left over to pay attention to food, enough attention left to flow over into your most intimate relationships, which ought to be nourishing if you work on them, and then into your community, and then into evolution. But if you have enough power, you fill up the fear bucket and you're done, or fear in food, right? So we get stuck. So amp up the energy and then reallocate the buckets. And that framework for biohacking didn't exist when I was teaching how to coach, but it's so foundational because it brings the neuro and the longevity and the happiness conversation together. Because we all know bitter, angry people, like, I'm going to live forever out of spite, right?
I'm going to grind my way in. Yeah.
Right? Joy is a longevity nutrient, and connection is one as well. Mm-hmm. And those are critical parts of the environment around you. And the definition of biohacking, change the environment around you, and inside of you to have control of your biology. You want youth, you can do it. You want strength, you can do it. You want cognition, or maybe you want the ability to lift the spacecraft out of the swamp the way Luke Skywalker does. You can probably do that too. It's just more work. I haven't done that myself yet, but any of those things, it's control of your own biology. Right?
Yeah. Well, like, I love that you brought up the emotions, because I think that the perception of a lot of people looking in from the outside is that, people look at Brian Johnson and wonder to themselves, does he actually have fun? Like, how, you know what I mean? Like, how do you have time to have fun when you're popping? I don't even know what the latest number of pills is, and getting blood drawn every 10 minutes and going through all these tests, and and leading such a regimented life. And it's an interesting dichotomy where, if we, as a human animal, if we don't have the joy and the connection and all of those more amorphous things in our lives, I don't know that mechanistically we're going to be able to grind our way to that longevity, vitality, and health span that we're all after.
This will get a little bit philosophical and esoteric, but in the world of longevity, there are two camps, and you only know this if you've spent a decade talking with experts. There is a group of people to whom death is abhorrent. They're afraid of dying. Mm-hmm. And there's another group of people who are more like expansionists. Like, who knows what you might do? Like, what's possible? I'm so curious. But when I die, I'm going to die. Mm-hmm. And I am in that camp. And it's a peaceful thing. I have zero fear of dying. Right? I know it's going to happen. Everyone who's born dies, and it might not happen for hundreds or thousands or 100,000 years, but I promise you the universe will collapse in on itself at some point and I'll die. Like, it's just going to happen. I'm not going to worry about it.
Yeah.
So it's funny, different events you go to, some of them are around running away from death, and the other ones are running towards life.
Mm-hmm.
And they're very different vibrations. I believe that if fear underlies your motivation, it's very expensive neurologically and biologically.
Mm-hmm.
And that if joy and service are what's behind your why, that your longevity will be much more pleasurable and much more successful. The other thing that people don't talk about, I take 100, 150 supplements a day, depending on which day it is and what I'm doing, and have for 20 something years. And it seems to be working. I also have expensive pee, and I recognize that.
Yeah.
So if I was to spend 8 hours a day on my longevity practice, that's 50% of your waking time every day. That means I need to live 50% longer just to break even.
Yeah. Good math. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So, wow. I want to live to 180 because that's 50% better than our current best. If it takes me 8 hours a day, I'm just treading water.
Mm-hmm.
So here's how to measure longevity. Here's how to measure effectiveness. And this is what's behind Upgrade Labs. And Upgrade Labs has 32 locations in the process of opening across the US and Canada. It's an AI longevity company that lets you do all the biohacks very effectively. It's that if you're going to do something to live longer or to improve your health or your biology, whatever, most people say, well, how much does it cost?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the last thing you think about, although it is important. And some people say, well, how much time does it take? That's not even the most important thing. The most important thing is how much energy does it take? You invest energy, you get energy back. So if it's really, really hard to do and it exhausts you, you're probably not going to do it. Right? Or you're going to do it infrequently.
Yep.
And the second thing that no one thinks about is suffering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Natalie, if I was to tell you I discovered something new, you can live 50 additional years of good life. All you have to do is wake up every morning and first thing, punch yourself as hard as you can in the eye 10 times. Okay. No one on earth would do this. Even the most diehard people you're going to wake up one morning and go, God, my eye hurts. I just don't have it today. And you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
So it turns out energy, then suffering, then time, and then money is how we really effectively allocate our energy and our resources for longevity and for any other personal development thing there is. Right? And that's why I set up Upgrade Labs the way it is. My whole AI system, we're designing it to say, how little time can you spend at Upgrade Labs to get the results you want?
Yeah.
Every minute. Yeah. How do I make it easier? Right?
Mm-hmm.
How do I stack things together? And because what I've learned most of all in 25 years of longevity, it's not the same recipe for every person.
Yeah.
So the idea of mixing 50 plus ingredients in the longevity elixir formula is destined to fail. It's not going to work because you needed less biotin. And that amount of biotin was a problem for you. Mm-hmm. Right. And so what I do like is, a stack of a dozen things that are most likely to work for a lot of people. And I make some of those. But at a certain point, you realize, oh, I like this stack of a dozen things, but I also want to take this other stack and it overlaps on these two things. And that's too much. And a lot of people are kind of making mistakes there, especially around like vitamin B6, which is arguably bad for you 99% of the time, the way it's used, even in the longevity world. So what I like to do is just teach people you're unique. Mm-hmm. Where are you today? And where do you want to go? Because it turns out, we're talking about longevity right now at Upgrade Labs. That's one of 7 big goals. Maybe you wanted to lose weight before longevity was a goal. Mm-hmm. Maybe you wanted to put on muscle. Maybe you wanted your VO2 max to go up because you're out of energy all the time. Maybe you wanted stress management or cognitive enhancement. Like all of those are valid, important, worthy biohacking goals. And what I know everyone gets to, and the reason my books are written in the order they are, is that when you start on any of those, you will end up in 2 things. You want to be more conscious and you want to live a long time. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter the entry. You will always end up there. And some people come in saying, I want to live forever, right? But if you want to live forever, or at least a very long time, you probably want to work on that consciousness thing so you can be happy while you do it. Yeah. And that's the conundrum. And people say, I just want to be happy. I'm not going to worry about longevity, but I'm fat all the time. Well, they're going to fix their metabolism And they're going to go, oh, now I'm actually happy because my metabolism works. Now I want to live long. So your goals change over time. And most of us don't even know what our goal is. So I use AI to help people determine that. And then just what's the fastest path for you? And that drives Upgrade Labs when people come into a facility. And you can go to ownandupgradelabs.now if someone listening wants to start an Upgrade Labs in their neighborhood. It's a franchise for a reason. But you can also go to the lab testing side of Upgrade Labs. It's called AXO Health. It's at AXO.health. And for about $600, you can run an advanced longevity panel. We'll tell you your metabolic age and a bunch of other things, and then recommend the biohacks to do for your goals based on your lab tests.
Nice.
Right. And it's not a functional medicine thing. I love functional medicine doctors. I work with them all the time. Some of my closest friends are, and they all love biohacking because the patients who biohack are the best patients.
Yeah.
Right. And biohacking is not medicine. Some doctors do biohacking, and I love it when I see a doctor say, no, you should buy a red light panel. It's going to help you with this thing. Right. And these are the doctors who are healers. And I'm so appreciative of them. And there's a beautiful synergy and like a dancing between functional medicine and biohacking sports functional medicine sports biohacking. The thing is, when I'm giving a lecture at the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine to 3,000 longevity doctors, I stand up and say, look, I'm an unlicensed biohacker and you're licensed physicians. What that means is you know things that I will never know, right? It also means I probably know some things you don't know, and no one can take away my license for speaking the truth. Because every physician listening to this knows that there is a gag order on them. And every time they want to say something that's true, but isn't consensus, that they are taking their livelihood at risk by telling you the truth. And that is nonsense. We have to end it. So biohackers play that middle role of understanding enough of the medicine that we can say things that doctors are afraid to say, but doctors are secretly cheering on and doing at home.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and some of them are putting it in practice in their practices.
It's
I think, I think there's in the functional medicine space, there's now, you have two camps almost, and you have one that are functional medicine, but they're really allopathic kind of just, they do a few different things. And then you've got the functional medicine doctors who really have their foot. I mean, I think it was at A4M, which is what you just mentioned, where someone looked around and said, man, I have never seen so many jacked doctors in my life in one place. Right?
That's a pretty good sign that something is working.
Like something is going right. Like these are people who are walking the walk and talking the talk. Like they're not just, I mean, unfortunately, your conventional doctor often is overworked, underpaid. They've had the curiosity crushed out of them in med school, and they're just trying to survive in the system that they evolved in. And,
right.
Now we have like this new breed of doctors that's coming out of there that somehow is breaking away and learning to walk that line, which I think is really exciting. And I think that, AXO Health sounds to me like that. It's like you said, it's not medicine, but it's like, let's look at your biology and see how we can help to optimize it within the confines of what we have in this room, which is all the cool toys, right? It's all the cool stuff.
It's all the cool toys. And it's really important to understand there's been a 100-year conspiracy to force you to go to the doctor when you don't need to. And this is particularly in the US.
No, well, not in Canada, because you can't even get a doctor.
That's a fair point. And as a Canadian citizen too, it's a bit of a garbage fire medically.
It's a bit of a sad state that we're in right now.
Sometimes I wonder if Trudeau actually just hates Canadians, or if it's something else. I haven't figured it out.
I don't think there's an awareness about that necessarily. I don't think so.
No, I wonder. I'm like, man, like, do you actively try to block people from healthcare?
Anyway.
But aside from all the politics, what's going on with medicine in general is, actually, let's talk about eyeglasses. So in the entire world, except for the US and Canada, if you know your prescription, you can go to an eyeglasses place and you just tell them what it is and they make you glasses in 10 minutes, or you can order them online. It's really easy. In the US, the medical industry lobbied to make it so that glasses are prescription. And the excuse is that that will make people have to go to the eye doctor to get eye exams, whether they want it or not, which will be good for Americans. Now, what that did is it means it's now really expensive to get an appointment with an eye doctor to do a test you could do on your computer.
Yeah.
And then all this rigmarole, all this system is set up to make it harder for you instead of easier. And it's the same with lab testing. Why do you need a permission slip?
Do you know that I've had arguments with people at the labs about getting my vitamin D3 tested?
Yeah.
Do you know that?
It's happened to everyone.
And I have to pay for it, right? So I'm willing to put my money down. And I get told, oh no, if it's not on the requisition, yeah, we can't do that. I'm like, come on, dude.
It's nonsense.
It is pretty funny.
Like, you have a right to know what's going on in your body, and you don't need a permission slip to do that. And that's why, at least in the US, with AXO Health, you never have to talk to a doctor. These are just your numbers. There's no diagnostic, right? We're not treating or diagnosing anything. Because to do that, at least in the US, you would have to have a license.
For sure.
We are happy to tell you this number is out of range. You might want to talk to a doctor about that. Or this number is out of range. Here are the lifestyle interventions that you could do to pull that number back into range, because your goal is this, and this number is not helping you get to your goal. It is explicitly non-medical, right? And that means it's affordable. Because if you think about it, like if most people listening wanted a vitamin D3 test in the existing system, you go to your GP, you pay whatever, a $50 copay or something, and you say, I want a vitamin D test. The doctor says, you don't really need one. They're nonsense, or whatever they're going to say. Maybe they'll say, okay. They write up a script. They don't even know where to do it. But eventually you go somewhere and you do it. You pay whatever the bill is. Then you get on the phone with your insurance company and says you didn't really need to do the test. And then you argue with them for 4 or 5 hours, because their job is to not pay you and to make it so it just takes so much time to pay you that you just give up. Yeah. That's how they make money. So at the end of all this, you now have a lab test that you could have just bought for $40.
Yeah.
And so why are we doing this? Just opt out. So when you do AXO, you never talk to a doctor and you never talk to an insurance company. You just get your numbers and you do with them what you want. And you can take them into your doctor if you need to. This means too, for doctors, if someone does that, they're going to walk in with lab tests so you can have a useful meeting, and they're going to know what's out of whack, and they'll have done research on it. So now you have a compliant patient who's interested and will partner with you as a caregiver.
Yeah.
So now doctors stop wasting time and patients stop wasting time.
Is there an education component to AXO at all to help people understand what they're looking at? Or are you really dealing with an audience with a clientele?
It's designed for people who don't know anything. It's like, okay, here's your numbers. These ones, they're within normal based on your goals. And this one, it's in range, but it's at the edge of the range. And you're tired all the time and your thyroid is at the edge of acceptable. You might want to talk to a doctor about thyroid. But before you do that, here are the 3 things you could do that might help to move this in the right direction. Try some tyrosine. Try increasing your iodine intake, right? Some boron might be useful for you. Eat less oxalates.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so just recommendations like that. We're not treating a low thyroid. We're saying you're low in energy. Your goal is more energy. This number isn't optimized. So optimizing is not medical.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. 100%. Well, and it's not, and certainly for things that are non-life threatening, which is a lot of these things in the earliest stages, like a thyroid that's not quite pulling its weight, or blood sugar that's kind of pushing the edges of where it shouldn't be. If people are given at least the opportunity and the tools to apply lifestyle changes first, and then if you need the intervention, then you need the intervention. But to have the opportunity to first do the lifestyle thing and then come back and test again in 3 to 6 months.
Yeah. And then you walk into your doctor if you need the intervention, or, oh my God, my inflammation's insane. What's going on here?
Yeah.
Okay, go do it. That's the whole point. But now you didn't waste your time when you went to the doctor. So I think this is a new model of medicine that is, I don't care about insurance. I don't care about doctors, because it was more expensive in terms of time and suffering to deal with my insurance company for something they're probably not going to pay for anyway, because it was preventative.
Yeah.
And this can unlock so much longevity when you, oh, that's what's going on. I had no idea. And funny enough, guess what the top 2 things that almost everyone needs? You want to just guess?
Dake.
Well, in terms of supplements, just in terms of like the areas where people need help on their labs.
Oh, well, I would say nutrition, just to be metabolically flexible. So metabolic flexibility. And let me think. On labs, maybe some lipid stuff.
It's not lipids. Surprisingly, you might think that it would be.
Yeah.
Primarily because lipids aren't as important as people think they are, so they worry about them.
Right. Well, especially the way we look at them here. But
yeah, I mean, there is useful stuff in lipids, no doubt. It's just that
you have to dive a little deeper.
Yeah, you have to dive
HDL, LDL, and total cholesterol.
Yeah, exactly. So the 2 areas where almost everyone's out of whack right now. Number 1 is thyroid. Like, oh, is it no wonder your metabolism is broken because the energy thermostat in your body isn't working right because your thyroid has oxalate crystals in it, or because you're deficient in iodine because you had bromine-based flame retardants and because you had plastics. So getting energy up from your thyroid, just about everyone over 40 today has subclinical hypothyroidism. And well, you're within range for your age. Like, gross. I want to be within range for a 25-year-old. Right. And when you address that nutritionally, or sometimes even with red light, or sometimes, especially as you age, with small amounts of thyroid hormone, it's like, oh my gosh, my workouts work again. And the other one is it's hormones. Yeah. And we have so much plastic and all this synthetic chemicals that are out there, the fragrances and things, they're decimating people's testosterone. And testosterone is the hormone that controls dopamine, which controls motivation. So you have a bunch of people out there who are at low testosterone, men and women, and low energy. So I'm not motivated and I have no energy. And then therefore the voice in my head says I'm a piece of shit. It's none of the above. It's that you're cold all the time. You can't make energy when you want to. And you don't want to because you don't have any testosterone. Testosterone is not about bedroom stuff, although it helps. Testosterone is actually about just being motivated by pursuing something that you want. Right. And man, you fix those 2 things. Oh my God, like life is so much better. And then your workouts work again and you want to go to the gym. And what's underlying all of that, aside from the toxins, we have a huge epidemic of mineral deficiencies. Yeah. All the crap that I ate when I was a raw vegan, and before I was a raw vegan too, a lot of the superfoods, the things I believed the most in, they suck minerals out of your bones and out of your mitochondria. And
are you still a kale hater?
I'm still a kale hater. I'm a diehard. And so when you start going, oh my gosh, I don't have the minerals that I should have, what that means is that if you try to meditate, your body says, oh, I should learn to be calmer. I just needed to pull a little bit of zinc. I don't have any zinc. I'm not going to get calmer. And then you went to the gym and said, I lifted heavy. And the body says, all right, I needed a little bit of insert one of many different minerals that you need to respond to exercise. Doesn't have it. It just gets stressed. Yeah. So after 20 years of doing this, the 2 most important foundational longevity supplements are not sexy. It's not all the stuff I talk about on my show even. It is vitamin Dake. You can go to vitamindake.com. Unless you're in Canada. Sorry, they won't let you do that. But this is a very specific mix of vitamins D, A, K, and E. And you take those first. And you also pair it with Minerals 101, which is on the same website on vitamindake.com. And the reason you do that is fat-soluble vitamins drive minerals into the correct tissues. And if you just take minerals without having adequate fat-soluble vitamins, they don't work. Take fat-soluble vitamins without minerals, they help, but they don't do what they can do. Right. And when you have mineral sufficiency, your bone density can go way up. And bone density is one of the strongest predictors of metabolic efficiency and longevity. Yeah. And as an example, about 3 years ago, I had an old yoga injury repaired. And to do it, a surgeon in LA had to saw through the bone in my foot, all the way through it, and take out 3 millimeters of bone. I was awake for the surgery because, well, I'm a biohacker and I'm interested. And I don't have fear like that. So my leg is numb. And I'm like, I'm so curious. I'm not watching it because apparently that's bad for you. I'm just listening.
That's probably really bad for you. Yeah.
And you hear the bone saw. It's like, and I can feel heat in my foot. And he turns to the nurse and goes, I'm having a hard time getting through the bone here. Like, is this guy even human? And afterwards, when we talked, he said, Dave, I did the same surgery earlier that morning on someone half your age, and their bones cut like butter. Like, what are you doing? I've never seen bone density like this. Like, well, I take my vitamin D, my minerals 101, and I'm a biohacker. And similarly, last month, I did a Viome test, and I've been an advisor to Viome for 8 years now. And Viome will test your RNA to see what your gut bacteria and your body, like what it's actually doing with your DNA. And it found cavity bacteria in my mouth. I have great oral health. I don't have cavities. I haven't had them in a long time because of what I eat. So that doesn't make any sense. So went to the dentist. They couldn't find anything on an x-ray, but I had a loose crown. And when we popped it off, there were 2 very, very light surface cavities because I couldn't brush my teeth there. So one, it's interesting. You could find it with data.
That's really interesting.
Okay. Number 2, they went to drill out these really shallow cavities to fill them. It took 3 diamond drills. I wore them out with the density of my teeth.
Because
I take my minerals 101 and my vitamin D. It's not that hard. Your body will become more solid in the world, and you will live longer if you have the minerals you need.
Yeah.
I also take a large therapeutic dose of ultra trace and trace minerals in Danger coffee. And this is my new coffee brand, post Bulletproof. I'm not involved with Bulletproof anymore. I don't know what they're doing with their products. Danger coffee is called Danger because who knows what you might do. Like, it's the good kind of danger. Like, oh my gosh, I could do whatever I want. I could do anything. I could ask that person out. I could start a company. I could, become a coach. I could do anything. And that sense of power. But what makes it different is it's actually mold tested. And it has that therapeutic dose of minerals that can go into your cells, help you to detox, but more importantly, help your cells make more electricity for several hours after you drink it. So it's got electrolytes and minerals. You can't taste those. It just tastes like the most amazing coffee because it's really high in coffee. But the effect when you drink it is like your body just says, yes, I want that. And it's because your body wants the minerals. So for me, my preeminent longevity strategy, and I do everything, it starts with vitamin D, minerals 101, and Danger coffee, because there's great evidence for everything in those. And that's foundational to all the sexy nootropics and longevity supplements and, intermittent hypoxia and all the unusual stuff that I'm going to do at Upgrade Labs. If the body isn't nourished with minerals, nothing works.
Yeah. 100%. I could not agree with you more. And the coffee is interesting because coffee in and of itself, it gets such a bad rap by so many people in the mainstream. And I think it's because so many people just don't understand the value of good coffee and, that caffeine in and of itself is a bit of a nootropic anyway. And so if you can tone down the bad stuff and tone up the good stuff and crank it up with some trace minerals, you actually have a bit of a superfood on your hands.
Well, you do. And there are people who go, well, I don't like coffee because it's addictive. So there's something you do every day. When you do it, you feel better. And if you stop doing it for a couple of days, you don't feel as good, right? Like, that's exercise. I'm like, oh, wait. So even just average coffee, including instant coffee, which is usually the moldiest you'll find, that kind of coffee in studies over and over, up to 5 cups a day is correlated with living substantially longer. Yeah. Yeah. So you can say, oh no, I like kale. There's no evidence for that.
Well, no, I think the problem with coffee is when people use it as a crutch, right? Their thyroid's on its knees. The adrenals are falling behind even worse than the thyroid. And coffee's the only thing that's keeping you going. That's when coffee's a problem.
I've been there and in stage 4 adrenal exhaustion. Here's the thing. 1 cup of coffee in the morning with electrolytes, like added salt in another glass of water, you will heal from adrenal dysfunction faster if you do that than if you don't. But if you do 4 cups of coffee a day, it's not going to work. The reason for that is that, oh no, coffee mildly raises cortisol. Cortisol is a healing hormone. Consistently high cortisol is bad for you. low cortisol is 4 times more deadly than high cortisol. And people in adrenal dysfunction have low cortisol. Mm-hmm. So teaching your body to increase cortisol in the morning when it should be going up anyway, and doing it in conjunction with electrolytes. I've twice in my life had stage 4 adrenal exhaustion. One time took me a year to heal. The other time took me 6 weeks. I drank coffee during the 6 weeks. I just didn't drink it all day.
Yeah. And you probably didn't drink it. Maybe you probably put some healthy fats in there too while you were at it.
Oh my gosh, who would imagine if you put some butter into them?
That you of all people.
Yeah. And it's funny, in the world of longevity, people, they demonize cortisol, but low cortisol is so dangerous. So it turns out cortisol is a longevity hormone. I would love it if every time someone was flying over 6 time zones the next day, they took a little bit of bioidentical cortisol. Mm-hmm. Because now their body doesn't have to make it, and they'll have enough cortisol to deal with circadian stress. And it turns out that gets rid of jet lag reliably and makes you much less likely to get sick. So there's so much out there that is driven based on science, based on data, but people just don't believe it.
I think there's a lack of context and nuance to a lot of it, right? It's like cortisol, inflammation. Cortisol is known as catabolic. It breaks things down. If it's chronically elevated, inflammation is bad if it's chronically elevated, but you need inflammation to heal from injury. You need cortisol to get your butt out of bed. I think one of the big issues in our space is oversimplified sound bites.
Oh God. Yeah.
And it's crazy because it's catnip, right? And
yeah, one of the reasons that I started the biohacking coaching program that you were in years ago, that I'm not doing anymore, was that I wanted to teach the nuances. Because what I found was there's a few people, and you can probably know some of them, who like, oh my God, I just discovered biohacking. So I went to Dave's blog and I copied, 10 of the posts and rewrote them. And now I'm a biohacker. And what they're saying is wrong. And one of the biggest examples is the keto diet. So I have a book that was written the year I was born about the keto diet. Mm-hmm. It's from Robert Atkins. And I lost 50 pounds doing it that way in my mid to early 20s, right? The other 50 pounds took me more than a decade to figure out. And that was why I wrote the Bulletproof diet. It was specifically to say ketosis is amazing as a scalpel. It only works with the right fats and the right proteins. And you cannot do it for long periods of time without there being some metabolic risk.
Yeah.
And the simplifying mob that's like, oh, keto. If you eat a carb again, you're a bad person. Yeah. And no, you don't need to be in ketosis, right? It's helpful for cognitive function. And if you want to be in ketosis, add some MCT oil, add some external exogenous ketones, get the power. We do that at 40 Years of Zen, my brain upgrade facility in Seattle. When people are there, they can't do the deep neurological personal development work if their brains are cooked. So I give them ketones, right? And so you just know it's a tool. And it's a tool where people have now lost millions and millions of pounds on the Bulletproof diet. Yeah. And there's lots of reasons it works, but it's not about just do keto. It just drives me nuts. And in fasting, the first big book,
it's cycling, right?
Yeah, it's cycling.
It's cycling. Yeah.
And also knowing your body doesn't need the same thing every day. Like the Bulletproof diet was the first major book that promoted intermittent fasting. Right. And about 5-6 years later, I wrote Fast This Way, which is my fasting book, to correct what people were doing when they would try to simplify it too much. Like you should intermittent fast every day. And even like Jack Dorsey, the former CEO and the founder of Twitter, great human being. And he had a little bulletproof shrine in his office and did this stuff, but he got to doing one meal a day, Monday through Thursday, and then just not eating for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And fasting at that level feels good because your cortisol goes up. And cortisol and adrenaline feel great. Right?
Until they don't.
Over time, it's not good for you.
Yeah.
So the whole point of Fast This Way is to say, look, different days require different fasting. Fasting is different for men and women. And you don't have to fast all the time to be a good person. Fast sometimes. And I've always said, look, have pancakes on Saturday. Just make them gluten-free. Like if you want to do this to keep your gut lining, keep your brain, keep your glial cells. So the nuances are there, and the simplification is is kind of painful sometimes.
Yeah. I think it's the biggest enemy of the biohacking movement is the oversimplification and the lack of context that takes over.
Bigger than Anthony Fauci, really?
What? Pardon?
Bigger than Anthony Fauci? I think he's a bigger enemy.
I don't know. I think they're right up there with each other, because what it does is it costs credibility, right?
Oh, yeah.
And very often things are taken out of context. People get hurt, like they get sick, and then it also gives the naysayers something to plant their flag on, right? You see, I told you they're all crazy. Look at what they're saying. And
yeah, you see some of this with Brian Johnson sometimes lately, where, he's doing a great job of being extreme, similar to the way when I wrote Superhuman. I'm like, I'm going to live to 180. This is what I'm doing. And all that. And it's sensationalist and it drives media, which is exactly what we need. So people are like, oh my gosh, people are doing this. And it's a very delicate dance to be weird enough to be in the news, but not so weird that it alienates people. And it's hard to do.
Yeah, it is. It's a tough line to walk.
Yeah. And then the simplification that people do, it's a double-edged sword there. If it's not simple enough, no one will do it. If it's too simple, it doesn't work right. And there's another small portion of biohackers out there where they will make it really complex. And then the message, this is a narcissist tactic. They'll make it, well, if you just study harder and just pay attention to what I have to say, you'll understand. And I'm like, dude, you just took Gilbert Ling's work, you added 3 levels of complexity and wrote this Byzantine blog post that people are spending 3 hours trying to read. You're not actually educating or being of service. This is an ego thing. And I've seen that as well. And bottom line is, it's different for everyone. And there are common rules. And the common rules for longevity are do less of the things that make you weak. And you do that first. And then you do more of the things that make you strong. And what most of us do is we ignore the first step and go straight to what's going to make me strong. I'll go lift every day. I'm like, welcome to injured joints. Welcome to low testosterone and high cortisol. Welcome to not recovering. When people come into Upgrade Labs, if they're on a muscle track or a VO2 max track, 20% of their time is stimulation and 80% is recovery, because all improvement happens during recovery. It doesn't happen during stimulation. But if you're a type A entrepreneur, like, I'm going to push, I'm going to grind, I'm going to push. That makes you old. It doesn't make you younger. What makes you younger is, okay, I'm going to recover. And you could recover by laying on a couch and getting extra sleep, which great. Most of us don't want to do that. So how do we compress the stimulation time? And how do we accelerate the recovery so that you walk out of there going, my body got the message, become stronger, become younger, become faster, become smarter. And the body felt nourished enough, vitamin D, minerals 101, and it felt safe enough and recovered enough to rapidly change. And that's my last book. I'm just explaining this. It's not about pushing. It's about recovering, and recovering can be hacked, and that makes you younger.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's great. I have a question for you. This is a tough one, I think, in our space, but I'm curious to know your point. If you've, how much thought you've put into this, and what your point of view is. Do you think all this stuff that we do, aside from the free stuff, which we know that the foundations, the most important things are free. Do you think all this stuff is ever going to really become accessible and affordable for more people? Because it's still right now, like, you have to be financially okay to do a lot of these things.
Well, look at the change over the last 10 years. So there was the first light therapy devices were exceptionally expensive. So I started True Light as one of the first red light therapy companies. Our devices are $199.
Right.
And some of them are a little bit more than that. And it's been running for 10 years, right? It's not the highest sales of all the companies out there. It's very accessible. Okay, that was a while ago. You can go to a place I don't normally go, like CVS, which is a drugstore chain here in the US, or Walgreens. They have red and infrared light therapy devices for under $200 on the shelf that anyone can buy with medical claims on them. That's happened in just not very long.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of interesting. And the role of biohacking is say, hey, look, here's what the crazy billionaires are doing. And all technologies start with crazy billionaires. The first automobiles, the first everything, the first cell phones, 50 grand in the trunk of your car and it barely works, right?
I want one of those. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what they did. And these were like 50 grand in the 80s. That's back when, pre-Biden dollars. And that's probably the equivalent of about $250,000 now. But they would do it because they could. And now cell phones are $1 a month in Africa. So what biohacking is doing is highlighting that it can happen and it is happening, and even incenting some of the billionaires to imagine it can happen, so they'll fund it. Mm-hmm. And from there, the demand is created. And when there is demand, supply will come. And the price comes down and down and down. Here's an example. I pioneered a very painful procedure called a 6-hand stem cell makeover. And for this, you lay down for 4 hours of anesthesia, and they put stem cells in every joint in your body and inside your cerebral spinal fluid. And you feel like you got hit by a truck for 2 weeks, but you get stem cells throughout your body.
Yeah, I got stem cells in my knee a couple of weeks ago. That was enough. One joint at a time, I'm good.
Exactly. It's stem cells are really powerful, and they've come down in cost a lot. Although in the U.S., it's they're very sketchy right now because of regulatory stuff. So I recommend people do exosomes, not stem cells, in the U.S. But that was a $100,000 procedure. And I don't recommend that clinic anymore. But I went down about 6 months ago to Costa Rica. And for half that price, I had every injured site in my body treated. I had my face done with stem cells. I had my reproductive area done with stem cells. And they reset the central aging clock in my brain, which is incredibly powerful stem cell stuff that you could never do the way, like with that $100,000 procedure. What they did is they used focused ultrasound to open up the hypothalamic part of the brain and let stem cells there.
I heard, who did I hear talking about that at Radfest?
Probably me.
Shelley.
You can go to
Dr. Shelley Gordon?
Yeah, this is Shelley Gordon's work. Yeah. But to do it with stem cells, you have to go to RMI. If you go to daveasprey.com/RMI, I have a link to the podcast where I interview Vince Giampapa, who runs the clinic there. And that also gets you, it's a $100,000 procedure, but you can get half off if you're, connected. So
you know the people. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's why I go to that link. But what you'll find is, okay, this procedure is 10 times better than what I did in the US and Utah. And it's half the price. And my brain is younger. Oh my God, the central aging clock, it's more important than resetting your cell aging clock. And David Sinclair's work, has been on my show, a colleague, a friend. Resetting like cell aging is so important. But if your cells think they're young and your brain is aging, what's happening? Well, let's do that. I have never felt anything other than the 40 years of neurofeedback practice, which is more on the happiness and allocating energy away from fear into things that matter. That's a very potent thing where you feel different. But the amount of, you would call it chi, that comes out from the central aging clock. I work with, Qigong practitioners, people who can read your body field and all that. And they all came back. And when I came back, like, your energy doesn't look like you're 50. Like, we've never seen anything like this. What did you do?
So when did you do it and how do you feel?
I did it about 6 months ago, and I feel just profoundly, even more energetic than I was before. I didn't have a problem with my energy. I'm one of the most energetic people I know now. And I was trying to explain it to someone, and there's a way of seeing, of like being present in the world, of sensing the world around you that isn't just seeing, but it's like seeing and feeling and everything. I feel like it went to 4K, and before it was, it was not that high resolution. So it's just more embodied and more connected in a youthful way. And that on top of having allocated my energy away from fear and having cells that have all the things they need that are younger and having had all the stem cells, and it's pretty incredible. I'm going to be going back down there and doing the memory centers in my brain as well as some other work. But again, that's 50 grand. Like, that's a nice car.
It's a lot of money.
Nice of a car.
But it is a choice. Well, I mean, for the people who have that kind of spending ability, and I recognize it's not everybody. There's lots of people that this is completely out of reach for them. But for the people, there are far more people for whom it is in their grasp, who simply choose to allocate their funds differently, then there are people who are taking advantage of this stuff, right? It's an investment.
It's an investment with the best returns you could ever have. And when I talk to finance people, I say, look, you know what compound interest is, right? And they're like, of course I do. Okay, well, live 10 years longer and tell me what that does for your portfolio. And they're like, oh my God. I'm like, yeah, put some money into that, right? For people saying, well, spending 16 grand on 40 years of Zen or $50,000 on going to RMI and making my donation, like, those are out of reach. Okay. Things change over time much more rapidly than you imagine. Mm-hmm. Right. And the cell phone is a great example of that. So is this little thing called AI. If you wanted to have access to AI 5 years ago, it was going to cost you $1 million. I know I was talking with sheikhs in UAE who are building their own AI labs for $500 million. Mm-hmm. Okay? And now it's $20 if you want to pay for it.
Yeah.
Okay. Things get cheaper over time. And so someone has to talk about what's next. And that's my job. And if you hear these things and you start feeling angry, that's actually an egoic response. It's called envy. Mm-hmm. And what I am hoping that you'll replace this with is excitement and hope, because it's coming, because someone is doing this on the planet. Thank you, Shelley Jordan, right?
Yeah.
It's coming. Thank you, Daniel Amen, for telling me about Shelley Jordan. These are people who've spent 20, 30 years solving a problem, putting it out in the world. And when something gets out in the world, it always is expensive at first, and then it percolates and it becomes normal. So especially given Bobby Kennedy coming into the US and removing corruption from the medical industrial complex, I think you're going to see a lot of longevity therapies that are very expensive in the US for no good reason becoming very available. The Washington Post is about to publish a piece where they interview me about what is the impact on biohacking of having a government that's friendly for your health. And oh my God, costs are going to go down, abilities are going to go up, and you won't have to travel places to do things. Maybe hopefully. Even what would happen if the amount of money you're forced to spend on insurance that doesn't pay for anything anyway? What if you could spend that on longevity treatments? Mm-hmm. What if your insurance company covered it? There's no reason they shouldn't, except the drug industry won't let them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a crazy new world we're moving into, and it'll be interesting to see where it all goes. I mean, I think with these treatments, I mean, whether it's stem cells, you mentioned gene therapy earlier. Were you talking about, is that the follistatin therapy, or are you talking about something else?
I am an advisor to MiniCircle, the company that makes the follistatin gene therapy. And this is interesting because one injection just under the skin, it's painless. For the average person, it makes them 9 years younger. Yeah. And for a hyper responder, some of them are decades younger. Mm-hmm. Right? It really moves the needle metabolically, and you test younger on the most advanced tests of aging that there are. So that's one of 10 targets for longevity. And I can't wait to do the next target. And I've collaborated with a company on where do we want to put this? And what's neat about that is gene therapy in humans could be really, really dangerous, because if it's something that you do and then you give it to your children, we've changed our germline. This isn't that. Mm-hmm. This isn't like mRNA and all that stuff. Even what it is tiny circles of DNA that enter cells, cause the cells to do something. And then when the cell dies, the DNA goes away. It doesn't spread. Yeah. And if you don't like what it's doing, there's an off switch.
Yeah.
You can take a common pharmaceutical that turns it off. So the risk is very low. It doesn't get passed on, and it goes away by itself after 2 years. But the 9 years of young that you got, it sticks around. Yeah. So yeah, I'll be doing gene therapy every chance I get.
Yeah. No, there's some exciting new ones coming down the pipes. I don't know if we're supposed to talk about them, but I'm excited for them to take GHK and slap it on a little piece of DNA.
That's one of the targets. Imagine if we made GHK like young people do.
Like we did when we were young. I mean, that's the thing, right? It's not, this is just sustaining a level of something that is reparative and protective.
And there's a big question. Why did the body stop making it? Was it a central aging clock thing? Was it something that got genetically engineered by aliens 100,000 years ago? I don't know.
We only want these things around for a while.
Yeah, like there is a reason that it's happening. And one of the things that inspires me is in science, unfortunately, because humans are involved in it, we always do the thinking thing that says, well, if everyone agrees, it must be true. So consensus has no place in science. Mm-hmm. So what really matters is edge cases, outliers. So I look for outliers, the longest person around. And when it comes to animal biology, there's two animals that make me so excited. And one of them is the logo, the mascot for Upgrade Health. It's an axolotl. Do you know about axolotls?
Is it like a little lizard that just kind of self-renews? It can grow parts back?
It's a type of salamander. And it's the one that has the gills outside of it. And this animal, it's the only vertebrate like it. You can crush its entire spinal cord, it'll just grow back. You can cut off any limb over and over and over, and it'll just grow back. It is the Wolverine of animals, and it's unimaginable. How does it do that? Because we know biology can do that. Mm-hmm. So that's one. And it's the logo for Upgrade Labs, because the other one was the naked mole rat, which is just not a good logo.
Yeah, it's not so cute.
Yeah. Do you know about those?
Yeah. Well, they're used in research and stuff, but they look sad.
they look sad and they look naked, but they're interesting because they're warm-blooded. They're mammals, mm-hmm. and they live in burrows a quarter mile underground where there's essentially no oxygen, and they're perfectly fine, and they live longer than other rats. Like, wait a minute. We have two cases living in the world around us who can do this stuff. Why can't we? There's a reason. And the longevity cutting edge people, we're figuring that out, right? And this isn't about making mutant humans. It's that we have those pathways encoded in our DNA and they're turned off for some reason, and we're going to turn them back on. Mm-hmm. So that, oh, you're injured? Let's heal faster, right?
All right. Last question is an ethics question, which is right before the where do people find you question, but which I think everybody knows where to find you, but regardless. So the ethics question is it ethical for us to make it that we're just going to grow limbs back and live indefinitely from the sound? Mm-hmm. I mean, if you take all this stuff to the nth degree, but the salamander, what's the salamander's lifespan?
It's much longer than other salamanders like it. I don't remember what it is.
But it's not in perpetuity.
No, they're not immortal. Okay. They just live longer than they're supposed to.
But, so the ethical question for humans is there an ethics quandary here?
There is a huge ethics quandary. If it's possible, how could we not do it now? It would be unethical. Mm. And here's the reason. If you believe in reducing suffering in the world, which is a major part of Buddhism and is a major part of most ethical practices. If you're walking down the street and you see a person who's fallen over and is injured, is it ethical to just walk by, or do you help them?
Right.
So we have a moral obligation to help ourselves heal better, to help ourselves show up in the world better, and to live a very long time. And the reason for longevity is that in traditional ancient society, some percentage of people lived a long time. And these were the elders, the village elders, and they're the keeper of wisdom, and their job is to hand it down. Mm-hmm. And what we have today is an epidemic of people who age and their brains go away and they're so tired and they don't have what it takes to be the village elder, to be the master who hands the wisdom down. I am here today because in my 20s, out of desperation, I spent a lot of time with people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s who had the energy, and they taught me all of this stuff.
If we can leverage these technologies to help people, to your point, heal better, suffer less, and imbue the youths, the young people with this passion for taking care of themselves, with this we'll call it biohacking knowledge, because, true longevity practices are rooted in what you do when you're a young person. If we look at the centenarians today, none of them set out to be centenarians. but they all ate
Yeah.
whole food. They all lived a healthier life. They didn't live in the toxic environment we live in, and they're
Yeah.
living to be centenarian. So if we can kind of start as, as parents teaching our children this stuff, not that you can't have this and you shouldn't do that, but just this is what we do. I think we're heading into a better place. We could be more optimistic, and not be
I am
negative.
surprisingly optimistic. One thing that I think biohacking has helped, the percentage of people under 30 who drink regularly is at an all-time low since recorded history. They're just saying it's not worth it. And when I go to parties here in Austin, there might be a bottle of tequila and maybe a few people drink it, but they're drinking true kava, or maybe they're microdosing something or another, which is much better for your brain. So the alcohol industry is panicking. There's actually articles out now about how there are too many vineyards. There's more grapes than people want to drink.
Is it really? Has it gotten to that point?
It's gotten to that point.
Wow.
Yeah. So drinking isn't cool anymore, and it's not going to get cool again. It's the worst drug ever for longevity. There's so many better ways of entering altered states. And isn't that funny? Biohacking since the early days has talked about all the altered states work because that's one of the things you do to be happier.
Yeah.
So isn't it cool?
I love it. Dave, it's been a pleasure.
Natalie, thanks for having me on. And
it's my pleasure.
Yeah.
And why don't you point, you've mentioned a few things along the way, but why don't we give people, I think there's a central place people can go to the mothership, but why don't we tell people where to find you?
The most easy one is dangercoffee.com. Try the new coffee. It is so much different and better. And go to daveasprey.com. You can find the podcast, 12 years, 1,200 episodes, lots of the people in the longevity movement, the luminaries, and everything else I work on is there. Upgrade Labs, AXO Health, and it's all there.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Natalie.